Well, welcome everyone to our recorded training on writing an effective letter to the editor. We're really excited that you're interested in this topic, as it's an incredibly important way to get the word out about the importance of solar, your support of solar, and a really great tool that you can use in the rest of your life as well. So join us for the next few minutes as we talk about writing an effective letter to the editor. So we'll go through introductions. We'll talk a little bit about Sun's theory of change and why we do what we do. We'll do an overview of letters to the editor and talk about their importance, the process of writing one, and considerations when you are writing one. And then we'll briefly go over some main takeaways to take with you when you are writing your first or your next letter to the editor. So my name is Annie Wolf. I am our VP of Community Impact here at Solar United Neighbors, and I'm excited to be talking about this topic with you today, and I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Kowach, and I am the Community Impact Fellow for Solar United Neighbors, and I also look forward to talking with you all.
All right, so what is Solar United Neighbors and what do we do? We are a 501c3 nonprofit that helps people go solar through our bulk purchase programs, and we also advocate for solar-friendly policies across the country. So our theory of change is that we help people go solar, join together, and fight for energy rights. We really truly believe that rooftop solar is the cornerstone of a just and equitable energy transition, and also that going solar is just the first step of your journey, not the last, or your interest in solar is just the first step of your journey, not the last. It's really, it's a great way to get involved and make sure that everyone has access to equitable energy and equitable, efficient, and clean power. So one of the ways that we actually do that is through letters to the editor. This is a really great way to not only get the word out about our co-op programs, our bulk purchase programs, but also those policies that we're advocating for across the country, and also getting the word out about solar as an energy solution in general.
Thank you, Annie. Before we get into the process of writing a letter to the editor and how to improve that writing process, we first want to get on the same page of what a letter to the editor, or an LTE, is. And a letter to the editor is a short letter sent to a publication about issues of concerns for readers. They are often in response to a newspaper's coverage of a published article, and they can do a number of things. You might read something and entirely agree with it, and you want to praise your newspaper for bringing attention to that issue. And that can really reinforce that messaging and encourage them to write more on the topic. Another thing might be you read that article and you want to support it and you think they've done a good job, but perhaps they've missed a key component of it and you want to discuss that, bring it up and share it. And so you can really add on to and enhance what you've been seeing. Another thing that might happen is you might read it and think that that article in the newspaper has missed the mark entirely. It's not representative of the situation. You think that there's some nuance that they haven't covered or they haven't seen. Perhaps you have a perspective that you feel like was overlooked. And so you can bring that up. Another thing is you could use a letter to the editor as a discussion forum. You're bringing to light something that they did an okay job about. You want to talk about it more. You want to bring that more into the public awareness. And so these are all the different things that a letter to the editor can do. And often it's a combination of these, and it might not just be any one of these. And that's great. And so now we are going to go into why they're important. And LTEs are a meaningful and easy way for citizens to advocate for public policy. When they're published, especially, they're getting that limelight on them and they're being put on a platform that more people can see. And so it's a really great way to be able to make a difference. Getting a bit more into what an LTE does is, first and foremost, it informs and persuades. Even if it does not get published, when you're writing a letter to the editor, it is informing newspaper editors that this issue matters to their readers. You cared enough to write in. It's also, if it does get published, informing and persuading the readers. They can see another opinion on a topic, and it might change their mind about something, or perhaps it expands their knowledge to something that will benefit them in their community. A letter to the editor also informs representatives and policymakers. A lot of times representatives have their staff monitoring LTEs, and if their name is mentioned, they actually get notified by their staff. And so this is a really good way to call attention, again, in a very public manner, to create that discourse and bring attention to different topics. Building on that, it does increase community awareness. This is one of many ways in which people get their information, and we really want to add to that and be able to make those information points accessible. And an LTE is one of many ways to do that. It also engages people in public discourse, not just in the written aspect, but it can become a conversation starter. How many times have you been talking to someone and say, hey, like, did you see this in the news or did you read that? And so this is a really great way to engage people. It also encourages more attention on an issue. And so this is something we actually really want to emphasize, is that even if you submit a letter to the editor and it doesn't get published, it is still making a difference. And the reason is again, it's a signal to the newspaper editors that this is something their readers care about. So perhaps they will allot more attention to articles that focus on that kind of topic. And that too can be a powerful lever for change. And so in this sense, volume does matter as well. And so, when you're writing that letter to the editor, definitely do not get discouraged if it doesn't get published, because it is still contributing to the purpose of a letter to the editor. All right, now that we are all on the same page, if you want to get started, the first thing that you always want to do is locate your newspaper's LTE submission guidelines. You want to make sure that they do in fact accept LTEs before you do go through all the effort of writing one. And they all are slightly different and have a few different nuances for submission or requirements. And so it's good to just have an understanding of that before you dive into the process. On the corner in the right, you see a quick example from a local Ohio newspaper. You can see that they just write out that they do accept letters to the editors. And they also highlight a specific thing where they say, please keep in mind that we expect exclusivity. This is something we want to bring attention to because this is usually the case where letters to the editors, they want you to have only submitted to them. And so it's a good just general of practice not to write one and then submit it to a bunch of places, but write one, submit it, and wait to hear back from that specific newspaper. On that submission guidelines, you will see a few things that are good to confirm before you start your writing process. The first is, as we said, that they accept an LTE. And then another big thing is you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of their word count. Now, this is generally 150 to 250 words. Sometimes that can change a little bit. But as you can see, we weren't kidding when it's a pretty short writing sample. So it's a nice, easy lift in terms of action you can take, because it's something you could hammer out during a lunch break or in the evening when you have a few minutes. And so word count, it's nice to know. And then you also want to confirm how they want you to submit your letter. Just make sure you have a good understanding of that process. And then you also want to consider timing, locality, and frequency. In your strategy for writing a letter to the editor, timing is key, right? As a newspaper, they want to bring news, current events, things that are going on now. So you don't want to write a letter to the editor to a newspaper article from 2 years ago, unless they've recently done one that's an update on that, right? They want to make sure that they are current topics. Another thing going into timing is that it's better to try, even if it's recent, right? It's better to try and submit that response, that letter, as soon as possible. For some of the bigger newspapers, it's even better to try and get that letter submitted within a day or two. But some of the more local newspapers, like a week or so, can be fine, but that is something you want to consider in your strategy for getting published. Another thing to consider is locality. If you're submitting a letter to a local newspaper, they are going to likely weigh your letter more if you're a resident and a part of that community, rather than if you're living on the other side of the world and you might not know what's going on in that community. Now, of course, there are bigger newspapers where they want to get all types of views, and that is not to say we ever discourage you from trying to submit from any newspaper. But again, it is this component to consider as You're strategically planning out your likelihood of that impact and getting published. Another thing is frequency. Newspapers want to showcase a number of voices, and so you might not have a highest likelihood of getting published if you just got published a week ago and you keep submitting. However, again, that volume does matter, so you can keep on submitting all the letters you want to really showcase that importance and interest in the topic. But again, just consider that you might not get published if you have just recently gotten published.
So now you want to get started. What are the steps to writing a letter to the editor? First of all, you want to be really clear. You want to introduce your topic and the importance of your topic and show appreciation when possible, whether that's to a representative or to the paper itself. Thank you for highlighting this issue. Thank you, ex-representative, for supporting this issue or for your service, etc. You also want to stay connected and focused. People relate to authentic stories, so tell your own story. Obviously, you have a connection to this topic if you are taking the time to write in. Even though it's 250 words, it takes time and it takes effort. And so sharing your own personal story shows how much effort and how much attention you want people to pay to this position. You also want to use facts and statistics to support your story. So, it's great to say that you're a solar homeowner and that you got your panels. When did you get your panels? How much did they save you? What has the impact been on your life in those, using those facts and statistics to support your position? And then specify how your topic affects you and others. When a newspaper is looking to publish a letter to the editor, they think about it in more than just the impact on one person. They think about how this impacts the community, how this impacts the area at large. So how does your story, how does your opinion or perspective affect others in your community? And then you want to close with an ask. You don't have very many words to get through all of those different asks, but you want to make sure that your letter ends with an action step, whether that's support this policy, take this action, but be solution oriented. Letters to the editor are not just about complaining. In fact, they're really not about complaining. They're about really supporting a position and asking people to take a stand and move forward with something that you're interested in. You can also share a resource for them to learn more. Websites aren't usually the best things to link in a letter to the editor because especially if there's a print version, you can't click on that. So you want to share an actual physical resource that people can view. And then again, give people actions they can take. Maybe that is signing a petition. Maybe that is going solar themselves or spreading the word or sharing something about this topic. So we have a couple of sample letters that you can take a look at. This one is one that was published in the Indiana Business Journal back in 2021. So you can see this one is timely. It talks about being in reference to a solar article that was published just a couple of weeks beforehand on May 21st, when this letter was published June 4th. And this is about a proposed solar acre farm that is surrounding some of the area homes that this person lives in, and also shares that this person put panels on their roof. So they talk a little bit more with statistics about how many carbon emissions that they've eliminated and what that actually compares to, and helps you kind of get your mind around those numbers. And then how this affects other people. These solar panels don't just affect the person who put them on their roof, but also other consumers in the area because they're supplying excess energy back to the grid. And this whole article this whole letter to the editor is about keeping net metering in Indiana, about keeping that policy that lets people actually sell their energy back to the grid. So it talks about how that benefits their community, why this is important, and what do they want people to do? They want people to support net metering. They want people to continue to reach out in support of this policy and make sure that it stays in Indiana. Unfortunately, this didn't stay in Indiana. That goes certainly beyond this letter to the editor, but this is a really strong example of a letter to the editor and how it can be really impactful in order to be published. We also have an example that was published in a Puerto Rico paper back in the beginning of this year, so January of this year. This follows the same format. And ironically is also about net metering in Puerto Rico. So this writer starts off talking about the policy that he's supporting, which is net metering, and explains what that policy is and how it benefits him and his community. So he, along with 19 other neighbors in his community, went solar back in 2020, and he talks in detail about how going solar affected his community positively. And that in order to continue to affect his community positively and also positively affect Puerto Rico, net metering needs to be protected and they need to be able to sell their energy back to the grid. And also the fact that going solar overall helps resiliency in Puerto Rico, especially when they're faced with extreme weather events. This one is a little bit different from the Indiana Journal just because the submission guidelines allowed for a much longer article. So you can actually see that version on the webpage and online.
While you're writing the letter to the editor, there are a few things we always want you to keep in mind and a few things that we also want you to try to avoid. So the things that we think are really important to always do is first and foremost, be respectful. You're never going to win someone over by being rude or abrasive in any way. And what we want to do is we want to create a conducive environment to curiosity and exploring a topic in more depth, opening people up to new information. And so being respectful is really the best way to go on this. And so always be considerate of your tone when you're writing a letter to the editor. Now, when you can, we really want you to try and relate your letter to a recent article published in the paper, right? Whether it's in response to something, which is really great, or even if it's not exactly, but you're linking to some of their other articles as resources, that is something that also benefits the newspaper with their readership and their numbers. And so really try to relate your letters to those recent articles that have been published and encourage that reading component. Now, avoid repeating false information. Always do this. And the reason why we say that is you might say that this is not true and then ... add that in. But if someone's skimming the newspaper and they miss that word not or that word that negates it, they might internalize that, think that's true, just catch the part that's false. And so be really cognizant of how you are framing the different points that you're making and be very careful to try and frame things as, that's again, as Annie was saying, the solution oriented, the things that are right versus focusing on the things that are wrong. Again, avoid website links. Those might be hard for some people to use, but certainly feel free to name a resource or a website title. So for instance, if you mention Solar United Neighbors, you can mention us by name and encourage people to check out our website, but don't put the hyperlink in there. And also avoid jargon. We want these articles to be accessible, understandable, approachable, and just assume that somebody reading this might have no idea what you're talking about. So avoid those technical terms, jargons, and abbreviations unless you specify what those are, and really make this something that everyone can read. All right, so now you have finished your draft and you're ready to go. But wait, hold on. Get a second opinion, ask a friend or a family member or even someone you volunteer with for your thoughts. It's always good to get a second opinion on how what you wrote is being received, making sure that you didn't accidentally miss something or if there was a typo. And it's just nice and reassuring to get that second opinion. Our team is also happy to provide feedback on your draft, especially, if everyone around you is busy, please feel free to email us at getinvolved@solarunitedneighbors.org. You can see that listed on our slide, and we will happily give you feedback on your draft. The one thing we will ask is when you are asking anyone, whether it be us or somebody on, somebody you're friends with or somebody you're volunteering with, make sure you give them a date to respond by. If you do decide to move forward and they hadn't gotten a chance to respond, but they give you feedback after you submitted, you definitely don't want to waste their time either. So for clear communication and to make sure you know when you can submit and be able to do so at a time you want, always remember to put that date. And then you're ready to submit. Your submission form might look something like this. Again, this is one example of many. This particular one has a form and you put in your information, you submit your letter, and you will see that most often they'll ask for your phone number and address. This is often because newspapers want to make sure that you are actually who you say you are and you have submitted the letter. And so oftentimes they will reach out to people to confirm, just make sure that you are you and that you wrote it and it's not someone else pretending to be you. And they won't publish your identifying address information. And so I think the only thing that you might see is like in Annie's example, they might say, oh, you're from this county or address, but usually you will know what is going to be published. This is another example of a submission page. And you can see everything's a bit of a different format. So again, goes back to like checking and understanding the submission format before you submit.
So after you submit that letter and press the button submitting your letter to the editor to the paper of your choice, like Michelle said, the paper may call you to confirm your identity. They do want to make sure that who they're publishing is the person that actually submitted the letter and you are located in the area that they cover. If you haven't heard back, you can take a couple of actions. You can call the paper to let them know that you've submitted. There also may be a contact information on the form that you can reach out to, whether that's phone or email, to directly see if they received your letter or to inquire about where you are in the queue and whether or not your letter might be published in the future. If you did get published, congratulations. That actually is a really big deal. You should celebrate that and let everyone you know that you are published. If you are publishing something, if you were published about solar or about Solar United Neighbors or about a solar policy, let us know. Send us your link. We want to celebrate that with you, and we also want to share to amplify your message. And you can get in touch with us at getinvolved@solarunitedneighbors.org. And then share your letter on social media. This, again, is exciting. And the whole point of this was to get your voice out about an opinion that you have or a story that you want to share. So share it on your social media channels and ask those you know to share it as well. What can you do afterwards? If you are interested in getting more involved with Solar United Neighbors, you can continue to write letters to the editor. We'll be sending out calls to action relatively frequently throughout the year. And you can even hop on our webpage and go to the Take Action page to see about more ways you can get involved with our work and with promoting solar across the country. You can also continue to learn about solar-related issues in your area. This is a great way to find information and things to write letters to the editor about. Keep in touch with policy, keep an eye on news articles and stories that highlight solar in your area. Check out your local and regional papers. Those are great ways to keep an eye out. You can even set a Google alert if you want to about solar-related news in your area, and sign up for solar-related publications like the Energy News Network, which highlights solar news across the country. And then draft a letter. Just get started. The hardest thing to do is to write that first sentence, and what you do, you'll probably get in a flow and keep on going. So just put pen to paper or start typing and see what comes out. It's a lot easier and a lot easier to edit a page where you've got a whole bunch of words than it is to edit a blank page. So getting started is really important. So overall, thank you so much for spending some time with us and learning about how to write an effective letter to the editor. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to us. And if you already have a letter and you want to get some feedback, let us know. Otherwise, thank you, and we hope to see you soon.